Hi, I'm Dean Rehberger, and I'm the director of Matrix, which is a digital humanities center here on campus. Have you guys heard of Matrix? Somewhere along the line. So I don't have to do a lot of explaining. We started back in 1995. A lot of our early work was in media databases, media repositories, primarily audio, but we do a lot of video work, we do text work. Since then, we've really expanded a lot. We do just about anything that you would term digital humanities. We do serious games. We do mobile application development. And from what I hear, it sounds like we should get a lot of them out before MSU figures out what they want to do with them, right? You can go to the App Store and get the Quilt Index app and donate $1 to the Quilt Index by downloading it. It's always nice. No, you don't have to. But anyways, I'm here to talk about Kora. Kora is our open source digital repository. And the process for this was actually rather simple. We're always building the same kind of database structure for all of our projects. We were doing it over and over again. So we said, what if we just build a digital repository that's really flexible, and that when we want to go do a project, we can just kind of set things up, program on a front end, and we got our thing. And that's basically what we did with Kora. Of course, it took us about 10 years. You know, we've been working on this. We've gotten about 4 or 5 different grants to pay for development of Kora over the years. It actually started as Project Builder. When we went to go open source, we had to change the name because Project Builder was too generic. So we changed it to Kora. Kora is a West African musical instrument. A lot of our work is in Africa, and that's actually another reason we developed this. We wanted to develop a database where the people in the field could actually be adding the metadata, the information, as we went along. But enough of me talking in general. Let's take a look at some of the things about Kora. You can find out all about Kora on our website. We have a lot of information about it. One of the things I want to take you to first, though, is to kind of look at some of our projects, get a feel for what we were thinking about and why we developed this. This is an oral history database. Overcoming Apartheid. It was a collection of all the voices of those people who fought against Apartheid. One of the major fights against Apartheid actually took place here at MSU. We were one of the forerunners of the fight. But like the World War II generation, it's a generation that's disappearing. So what we wanted to do was to capture those voices. The problem is, in America in particular, most students have no clue what apartheid was, what happened, what the struggle was. So we not only wanted to give people the ability to, I can't see back there and I can't see up here. We wanted to give people the ability to learn about apartheid, but at the same time get lots of different media. So what happens here in the database is we have, you know, text fields, we have fields for the media, we have fields for the audio, and then what the person who's adding it can do, they can associate it and then actually create the front-end essays. They don't have to have any programming skills. All they have to do is be able to add the data in and then make the associations and they get the front end. Because we're actually interested in kind of complex objects on the output when people do searches. Because we know from education that Google searches don't really help very much. You get the information just in a long list. What's better is if you can get associated information together. Another good example of this is if you get a chance, you got to see the American Black Journal. American Black Journal was a great project. Did you guys know this television show? It comes out of Detroit Public Television on every weekend. It's an interview show. It started back in the 60s, and it has just about every important civil rights leader that came through Detroit was interviewed on this. It was sitting in the basement of the public radio station, the public television station's building, and they basically said, come and get it, we're going to throw it away. So what we did is we went and got it, and we've digitized the whole thing and made it available for educational purposes. But this is one of my favorite ones, Explorer in Pennsylvania History. We worked with them for a long time, and a lot of the features of Kora actually developed with this project. They were paying this was back at the turn of the century, they were paying $27,000 every time they went to publish a story, and the story for them was the kind of combination of media, text, images, things like that, to web developers. This is one of the content people. This was just the web developers. They were paying $27,000. So what we did is we put the whole thing into Kora. Now every time they want to do a new story and put it online, the web development costs them nothing. They just put the information in, associate it together, and then it comes out as a story. So this, again, it kind of does have, in a sense, commercial viability in terms of what to do. But let's get into Kora itself. We actually have a site dedicated to it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually play a little video for you that kind of gives you an overview of Kora. It was done by one of our main developers, Matt Geimer, who worked on developing this for years. I think some of you probably know Matt. He now works for Microsoft. I should say, I'm going to step back a second, because I forgot to say this. The way that we do development at Matrix is we have a digital commons. We have about 15, upwards of 25 students, mostly from computer science, but they come from ComArts, they come from all over campus. They go through a training regimen. We have kind of a code book. They have regular meetings every Friday. And what we try to do is we try to make sure that we get very consistent code. Because one of the big problems we have in the digital humanities, and well, many projects across campus, is that people go out and hire a developer, they hire a student, the student gets hit by a bus, student leaves, graduates or something, right? And then what happens is nobody can figure out what's going on with the programming, right? They're stuck with something that doesn't quite work. Nobody can fix it, so then they got to hire someone else to start all over again. What we try to do is we try to get this whole cadre of students all working together, interchangeable, so if one leaves, then we can have another one there. The interesting thing is most of our computer programmers are primarily women. We're strong supporters of women in computing and women in engineering. And there's actually a whole host of reasons that happened over the years, but it's been very, very good for us. And the bad thing is we get them all trained up, they do really good work, and then they go off and work for Microsoft, making twice as much as I do, right? And so one of the things we have is Kora is now probably owned by Microsoft, but what the heck?
What is Kora? Kora is a platform to create and manage digital archives, libraries, and repositories. Let's say you have some objects you want to store, such as a multimedia collection. Kora is a platform to create and manage digital archives, libraries, and repositories. Let's say you have some objects you want to store, such as a multimedia collection. Kora can. What is Kora? Kora is a platform to create and manage digital archives, libraries, and repositories. Let's say you have some objects you want to store, such as a multimedia collection. Kora can do that. Or maybe you house a document collection and you want to store that. Kora can do that too. Kora can store any type of digital object and have an unlimited number of metadata elements about that object. The power of Kora lies in the ability for anyone to create these repositories and then manage them. You define the type of metadata you want to include with a digital object. If you decide you need to add a metadata element to your object, you can do it with a few simple clicks. Kora also provides the ability to display your objects outside of it. This provides the ability to create rich resources for the public to interact with. The objects are yours to do with what you want. Kora provides programming libraries to make this happen. Overall, Kora is a great tool to store digital objects and easily retrieve them. It is lightweight and has minimal requirements with a fast and easy install process. Try it out and see how easy it can be to store all sorts of digital objects and their metadata.
So basically it works like a CMS. And you don't need to have programming skills. You just go in, you set up your metadata fields, you start entering objects, you start entering metadata, and you have your database of materials. What used to take us lots and lots of programming time now takes one person a couple hours in the afternoon to set up the database itself. And then we have that. What does take some programming, though, is once you have that database, if you want to do some kind of different front end, then you have to do a little programming to pull it out and actually put it on the page in the way that you want to. But once you have it being pulled on the page the way you want to, if you keep adding information, you keep adding new stories, you keep adding new text, they're automatically going to be populating the site. So it makes it really easy. And this is the reason that we invented Kora over the years, because it allows us to get projects up and running in just a matter of hours. It allows our content providers to put things in. Because we know that, as any good library or archive knows, the expensive part of doing any project isn't the technology, it's the metadata. It's the content. It's the information about the objects that's really, really expensive to generate. And so we want to facilitate that and make it easy. The other thing that we found out over the years is that faculty members, highly intelligent people, don't know anything about metadata, right? They use it all the time, they rely on it, but the idea of them actually taking an object and giving it good metadata so that it's useful is just totally foreign to them. And one of the things that Kora does is it actually encourages good metadata standards, good metadata practices, gives them at least the Dublin core so that they know, so that we know that the objects will actually be useful on the output. Now, how did we go open source? Well, we went open source in two different ways. One is we wrote it into our grants. We had IMLS grant, we had NEH grants, we had NSF grants to kind of pay for development. Now, one of the problems in our field is we don't really get money to develop Kora. We get money to develop the American Black Journal. We get money to develop overcoming apartheid. So we have to get money for those particular projects, and then in the process, we can build up our back-end stuff. Okay? So this is kind of over the years. And in each one of these cases, we said, you know, we would make whatever we develop freely available and open source to the public. This is very important to us because you can see most of our stuff is cultural heritage, and cultural heritage shouldn't be sold. That should be something that people can get and use, especially for educational purposes. We also wanted to go open source because we work with a lot of cultural heritage institutions that, frankly, can't afford things. We also wanted to go open source because we've done a lot of analysis of digital repositories, Fedora, DSpace, Content DM, on down the line, and there's not really good money models. Digital repositories don't really make money. So what we did is we applied, it was back in 2007. It was a real simple process. MSU made it great. They gave us some forms to fill out. We sent them back. It was Paul Hunt back then in the licensing office, and they gave us a GPL. And now we have it available. It's on SourceForge, where you can download it and get it and use it, and has licensing. We're in the process of upgrading the documentation. Now, two last things. One is, up until now, we haven't really advertised it. We haven't really encouraged it. We haven't really grown a big developers community, because one of the things we know about open source software, everyone thinks open source is free, right? You guys know open source isn't free. You use open source all the time. You guys cost money, right? So we know that if we make it open source and we really publicize and we get lots of people to use it, we're going to be stuck with doing a lot of support. And we don't want to do that. We have another center we know of that has some real popular open source thing, and they could spend $250,000 to $500,000 a year just on support. So we haven't done that. However, we are going to actually this year start really making a push, because what we're going to do is we're going to make it a plug-in framework so that you can actually plug it, Kora, into like WordPress or Drupal or any of the major CMSs, or into an Angel or Blackboard, so that it makes it a lot easier to use. And you don't need as much programming time on the output. Other questions? How much time do I have? 5 minutes. Questions about Kora?
You can use your time to show Eli.
I made a video to show off
You didn't
this.
make a video, Matt made a video.
I authored the video. I own everything at the Matrix.
Big check the copyright on that.
Because that's why I asked that question before about authorship versus who actually does the work.
Do you have any statistics on your download rate, use rate?
Yes, I don't have them offhand. I was talking to our head developer. With our Digital Commons, we do have a lead programming developer. And it's really great because one of the things we do is we instill a lot of corporate software checks and balances so that when they actually go out into the world, they know what they're doing. And he basically says, your downloads are dismal, was his. But as I said, our downloads are dismal because we intentionally made it so. We don't, we really haven't had good documentation. We really haven't, it's something that we primarily use and our partners primarily use, and a very small set of people. And they said we're going to actually change that and see if we can't build a larger community around this. But up until now, we just haven't pushed. Ethan, is that a good assessment of our downloads?
Yes, horrible.
No, at least 3 of them from me.
You've downloaded 3 times? See? There we go. That's quarter baller down. No, last time I checked, it was in the low 10 to 20, 30 a month or something like that.
Do you have any cultural institutions that are using it right now?
Yes, we have a number of cultural institutions in Africa. We have a number of cultural institutions here on campus. You notice that the MSU archives uses Kora. Lisa actually used to work for us here and then now moved over to the archives. And she's been responsible for a lot of the interface improvements because she said, oh gosh, it's ghastly. You guys got to improve that thing, right? No, and actually working with the archives has been great because they've really offered a lot of kind of user experience things that we really need to change.
I think you mentioned that was released under GPL. Mm-hmm. What made you choose that over like any of the other licensing, or was that more through MSUT or the licensing office that kind of chose that?
Yeah, that was through the licensing office. That's in a sense they choose it for you as a thing that you can do.
Is there, in trying to get a sense of the plugin, because it does seem to be like that's probably the way to go in terms of being able to snap into WordPress or some of these other things. Is that something your team is working on, or is there a broader community of folks that are going to contribute to this?
No, our team is primarily working on. We're actually working on the next version 3.0.
3.0 is going to go live months. And the roadmap, the plugin architecture is for 4.0. For the next, full.
And that's when we're going to probably start pushing for. I mean, the primary problem here is and you guys can understand this as developers, it's easy to make the back-end database part and flexible where you can build up the things. If you want to make complex objects on the output, where you can make different decisions of where things are going to go, there's always going to need to be some kind of programming there. There's going to need to be some kind of step to make it easy. There's other things like Omeka. I know you know Omeka. That's another kind of publishing platform like that, but it has very kind of stringent ways that you can actually show things off. You can't really create that complex objects. The same was true with the other digital repositories like Content DM. We wanted something that was much more flexible in terms of how we could actually show the results of what people see, what's dynamically produced. But what we want to do ultimately is make that more, especially with HTML5, we can probably do a lot of things where people will be able to, make different kinds of presentations just by dragging things around.